Well, speaking at least of something good here, you got Aaron Rodgers. Now, I've been trying to watch more of the NFL. If anybody knows me, I'm a big hockey fan. I played ice hockey for over 25 years. So I'm big into the NHL. I'm also a professional ice hockey referee in the sense of I do, high school and stuff like that. I get paid for it. That's why I say I'm professional. I don't do like the AHL or NHL or something, nothing like that. I'm not that good, but some guys are and they deserve it. Well, we got Aaron Rodgers here, the NFL superstar, blasting the media's COVID vaccine witch hunt in a Saturday's appearance on Joe Rogan's podcast, and explain why he refused to get the jab during last year's football season. We got a clip here, and I want to watch it because Aaron Rodgers has really grown on me over the last couple years, and I think it's deserving to get a little bit of action here on the Bald Brad Show with him on Joe Rogan. Let's go ahead and roll it.
Hindsight is 20/20, right? We're looking at it from after it's over. And so many people, they just bought the narrative that was being promoted by CNN and MSNBC and wherever, that if you get vaccinated, you can't get COVID, you can't spread COVID. That was the narrative.
And that's my thing. Listen, I get it. Like, you want to test everybody every day? Cool. Yeah. That's fine. You don't want to keep people safe if that's the benchmark for it. But as we look back now, let's not revise history.
That's a key point there. Remember, it is a thing for the progressive left and Democrat Party to revise history in their favor. We see this. The greatest example is talking about the Civil War. The greatest example is talking about slavery. The greatest example is, that combined just that issue of slavery, segregation, certain rights that were passed, was done by Republicans in the favor of life, liberty, that all men are created equal. That analogy over there in terms of Republicans implementing that, where the Democrat Party was the one that wanted slavery. They're the party of the Ku Klux Klan. They're the party of suppressing black people, but you don't ever hear that in the history books. They do this whole Howard Zinn revisionist history within schools where they just talk about the North and the South. They don't ever talk about that it was the Democratic South. They don't ever talk about that the Democrats were the ones that suppressed black people. They don't talk about the metaphor plantation that's taking place nowadays of still doing the same thing, just in a more of a metaphorical way rather than a literal physical way. So I love this idea of him talking about, let's not revise history. Let's actually talk about what really happened here. It's an important comment that Aaron Rodgers made.
Let's not revise history on what actually happened and what was said. Because what was said was, you get the vax, you can't spread it or contract it.
And no one's
talking about that. And I'm surprised, honest to God, this is even on Twitter. I'm surprised Twitter hasn't taken it down. I don't know if this clip right now, this segment's going to get taken down because of that. We don't ever talk about that. All the stuff that took place, and probably because there were so many lies, there are so many things that we were told as a public that we can't even keep track of all of it anymore. But he is 100% right. We were told that if you got the vaccination, that it would not spread, it could not be contracted, and basically you wouldn't have any symptoms. You'd be good, right? Like all the other vaccines we've had over the years. But no. All these things. Oh, well, it just softens the symptoms now. Oh, well, you could still contract it. Like Joe Biden's had like his 50th freaking jab, and he still gets it multiple times. So it's all crazy. Look, I got the vaccine because I knew it would soften the blow, but that's literally the only reason. So I didn't get dramatically sick. I would have been fine probably if I didn't have it based on the statistics and the survival rate. Not probably, almost a certainty, but they're going to spread this lie, and the media did spread this lie and still do. They still do. So I'm glad Aaron Rodgers here stepping up to the plate.
Seems upset that was a lie, including Burks, who has said that she had always known that it was not going to stop transmission and it was not going to stop people from spreading it, which is wild. She would say, we knew that you were still going to get it, even if you got vaccinated, which is, no one said that.
No. Pandemic of the unvaccinated.
Yeah.
What do they call the winter? The winter of death or whatever,
yeah,
for the non-vaxxed?
I saved that. Winter of death and suffering.
Yeah.
It's like they were Game of Thrones. Like they were talking about the fucking White Walkers coming. Winter of death. Jesus Christ. It's so wild because at that point when they had said that, we had already realized, like, oh, this is 78% of the people hospitalized were obese. Most of the people that died were either obese or very overweight or very old.
Comorbidities.
Yeah, 4 comorbidities, at least 4 for like more than 50% of the people.
It's crazy. And that's not the only clip we have here. Hang on, folks. We got another one with the same the duo there talking about COVID-19 and just kind of how Jen Psaki lied to the Biden administration. And what's interesting here is, if you recall, you couldn't call this out because you were looked at, basically as not a racist, but basically one that discriminates or whatever against obese people. If you're talking about, well, if you had 4 or more comorbidities, you are very inclined on a percentage level to possibly pass away. This is the one that's going to impact you the most. And so why don't we talk about health? Why don't we talk about losing weight? Why don't we talk about eating healthy? But you can't do that nowadays because the Democrat Party, the progressive left, have overtaken the culture. And so if you talk about obesity, if you talk about somebody losing weight for their health, you're all of a sudden looking at it like your name called basically left and right. I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but basically you're suppressing people. You're not willing to understand what they're going through, whatever it may be. You're completely trashed, but at no point can you actually talk about the realism that's taking place with that person and you wanting to help them, saying, hey, look, if you would just lose a certain amount of weight or if you would eat healthier, you'd be less inclined to die from this. But you couldn't say that because you'd be banned, removed, censored, or whatever it may be off Twitter, YouTube, the big tech platforms for just saying the obvious. And so obviously, if you can't say the obvious because your fear of getting removed, that information is getting suppressed and it's not getting out there to people. And if it is, like I said, you know what happens. Well, Joe Rogan just straight up calls out Jen Psaki for her lying and basically everything that she said, back when, and basically compares and contrasts her to Kayleigh McEnany, the previous White House press secretary for Trump. I mean, she's just a freaking national treasure herself.
When Jen Psaki said these vaccines are approved by the FDA, which is the gold standard, that was a lie. They weren't approved. This was not true. They had an emergency use authorization. They weren't approved. But she was a propagandist. I mean, when she's working for the White House, she's this person that, answers questions, and most of it, the hard questions are all by Peter Doocy on Fox News. He was like the only guy that was like pushing back against her. And she just fucking flat out lied on not just one occasion, multiple occasions. I mean, maybe they had a narrative that they told her. Maybe these are talking points. Maybe that's her job. But it's a weird job in the beginning, right? To begin with, because it's a job where you're not even asking the president. You're asking this White House press secretary.
Yeah.
So there's a person, and the only one that was good at that girl, McEnany, what's her name? Kayleigh McEnany. The one who worked for Trump, that lady was a fucking assassin. That lady had like binders with like footnotes, and anyone would say some shit. That's interesting because actually CNN said this, and then she would like quote it back to them and stuff it in their face. That lady's the best ever at that job. She's the fucking Michael Jordan of White House press secretaries. She's a fucking wizard.
Hey, he's not wrong, folks. He's not wrong. Kayleigh McEnany has a book out. If you haven't read it, I forget the title of it. She's wearing a pink dress. Phenomenal book, and it really talks about how she came in on the offensive, how she came and prepared her notes, and just the amount of work that she went in and did. And by the way, she would talk to Trump. She would actually get his take on it. I mean, Sarah Huckabee Sanders did the exact same thing. I don't think she was as prepared and as good as Kayleigh McEnany. Jen Psaki, as we have seen, we've covered Peter Doocy versus Jen Psaki countless times. I mean, a lot of our subscribers literally come from my take and my commentary of Peter Doocy videos going up against Jen Psaki and Karine Jean-Pierre. We also have Jackie Henrich coming into the mix now because it looks like Peter Doocy is just blowing up. So Fox is trying to get him anywhere and everywhere they can to do commentary, to do certain journalism. So she's stepping in the mix now. She's growing on all of us. We got a video just went out yesterday as well as the day before, I think on Friday, with her. So check her out. Jackie Henrich, you're doing a phenomenal job. You're the next gladiator. I could see you rising up. But look, they're asking the right questions. But like I've said, to the credit of the press corps, they actually are stepping up and asking more questions. We just don't cover it on the show. I usually watch the entire White House press briefing, and they really are asking the same questions, but you see it more coming from a Democrat progressive side when they ask it, of which they're willing just to kind of take her answer and not really push back in the same way that Peter Doocy does or Jackie Henrich. And hopefully I'm pronouncing her last name right, of Fox News. Joe Rogan sees it. We all see it. Kayleigh McEnany is probably one of the best White House press secretaries to ever go down in history. I don't see anybody competing with her. And you see Jen Psaki was trying to do it. Karine Jean-Pierre tries to do it as well with the notebook. They don't know what's in that thing. They don't study on the same level as Kayleigh McEnany does. Where she, honestly, guys, she didn't really need to flip through the notebook. The only reason she did was to get direct quotes because she couldn't memorize them all. But she just absolutely thrashed what's taking place. The whole PR, the whole thing of Burke, the whole thing from Anthony Fauci needs to be investigated. And you got a lot of Republicans. If we get in there in 2024, if we take over in 2022 as well, I expect to see some investigations, not just on what took place with Anthony Fauci and Burke, but the whole COVID-19, the lab leak, the Wuhan lab leak, getting investigators in, and actually having China be responsible for what they did with COVID-19. And honestly, I'm surprised that nobody's talking about the discrimination that took place on the unvaxxed and still the unvaxxed. I love how the Democrats are all for, and the progressive left are all for discrimination and all these rights, the NAACP, the ACLU, all this stuff. You know, where were they with the discrimination on the unvaxxed? Nowhere to be found. But they're all for discrimination when it's in their favor, when it goes with their agenda, when it goes, with their narrative. But when it's on the other end of the aisle, when you have conservatives and Republicans that don't want to get the jab, they don't want to get vaccinated because it wasn't promised as advertised, all of a sudden, they're the enemy. All of a sudden, they're the ones that are going to cause everybody to die. All of a sudden, they're the problem, which is what a little bit of Aaron Rodgers talked about on Joe Rogan's podcast. So I recommend you go check it out. But I want to show you just snippets there of them calling out stuff that we couldn't talk about literally like a year ago. Like a year and a half ago, you couldn't say any of this, and you're just removed, you're deplatformed, you're censored. And you're on the progressive left, they're going to do revisionist history, and they say, well, that never was the case. Who got removed? Who got banned? Which is baffling, right? Because you literally could still get banned on Twitter and YouTube for saying that a man is a man. So they can't sit there and tell us that this never happened, because it did happen. And luckily, all of a sudden, we're allowed to say it now. I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Bald Brad Show. If you did, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all our future content.